Yeah, what triggers it and what is the actual cause?
Yeah,
And
because
I'm
I don't know if it is autoimmune because people do get over it, right?
yeah.
Like it probably doesn't last forever in
Mm,
anybody, just because like people do get over it, right?
yeah.
But what is it?
It's a good question. And I think you're right that it's like something that definitely predates the COVID uh, event.
Mhm.
There's been similar things throughout history. Um, and yeah, that is, and I wonder too, could it be triggered by things other than getting sick, like other than like a virus or something? Is there maybe some other
Maybe.
factor at play there?
I
Because like you said, you don't remember if you got sick, and maybe you didn't, and just whatever
Yeah.
effect it is happened without getting
maybe
sick.
maybe stress actually.
Yeah. Oh
Now
yeah.
that I think about it, because like it doesn't have, you're right, it doesn't have to be getting sick, but what the body does when you're sick is it's weakened.
Hmm.
It's overworking to fix a problem, right?
Yeah.
And that could be just too much stress.
Oh,
Um,
well, I mean, it's well known that stress, in your life can have physical effects on your body, like
yeah.
very tremendous physical effects.
So
Like,
so that which we know could actually be exactly the same thing as long COVID.
well, yeah, and you know what? Here, maybe the reason it sticks around is it's like sort of like a self-reinforcing system.
Mm-hmm.
Sort of like, let's say, like, so
Well,
I
it's
know
hard to get
people.
away from stress for one thing.
Well, yeah, but even when you're in that kind of quagmire, it's really difficult to pull yourself out
Giggity.
without, yeah. um, and because like for instance, I know people who like have back problems, right?
Uh-huh.
Um, like a family member actually that has back issues, and she actually my mom also had something similar happen. Like so she had some lower back pain and all this stuff, and like she would pretty much just lay in bed all day. And I kept telling her, you got to get up and like work that, because that's the only way you're gonna repair it. But she just couldn't bring herself, because it was like, oh, it hurts, oh, it just hurts so bad, I can't even get up. But it's like, well, but the reason it's continuing to hurt is because you're just laying in bed, you're not getting up and
Yeah.
kind of powering through that pain to rebuild. And and obviously normally you would do that incrementally, you don't just like
Mm-hmm.
go
Mm-hmm.
for a run, and do some
Yeah.
power lifting like with your back hurting like that, but starting small and working up. But that's the thing, is I think there may be some correlation there, that it's like these effects are inducing further stress and potentially depression or various other things, and those things kind of feed into each other and perpetuate the effect. So maybe it's
Mm-hmm.
like it
Mm-hmm.
could be that it's just completely psychological, um and doesn't have
Well,
anything to do with any physical anything, at least in some
psychological
situations.
in the sense that um, it can have a real physical effect on the
Yes.
body.
Yeah,
Like, yeah,
it absolutely, yeah, like depression and stress absolutely can have
yeah.
a physical effect, and those physical effects might actually reinforce the depression and stress.
Mm-hmm.
You
Mm-hmm.
know, like you might be like with my mom with her back pain and stuff like that. Like I'm sure she wasn't happy, because she was always one that liked to get up and do things, and
Yeah.
work on the house and go out shopping and hang out with her friends and stuff. And with her back hurting, she couldn't really do that, and so that would certainly add to like some depression, stress, and frustration, I'm sure.
Mm-hmm.
Which would then, like in her case, I think it was like some kind of tension kind of thing. So that would obviously, she's going to be, stress increases that, inflammation and tension and stuff like that.
Pension.
Tension tension sheet. Oh, man.
Yeah, it's interesting now that I think about like tying it to stress and you know, you bring up like how pain kind of keeps you immobile and how that creates a feedback loop of more pain because, you know, like giving the body an aid to circulation. Um, I mean, obviously not if it's like agonizing pain or a broken bone or something like
Yeah,
that actually just needs to rest and heal. But you know, getting the blood flowing helps kind of like flush the body of toxins the way it normally does in a normally functioning environment.
sure. Well,
You
and
know, and it gets that pain out too,
yeah.
because the pain is actually caused by, you know, like real physical tangible things in the body,
Hmm.
and nociceptors being bound to by these things, you know, like lactic acid and stuff like that from, you know, muscle tearing and all that, you know, all that things, you know, all those things like that just kind of pool up if you
Hmm.
just lay around, right?
Yeah,
And you still hurt.
exactly.
Well, I'm
Well,
doing this again.
well, actually, one thing that just occurred to me too is maybe the stress aspect, and maybe stress, anxiety, depression could be like from the COVID side of things, this long COVID thing, um, could be initiated based on people's interpretation of the situation. Because when you look at it, when it was emerging and happening, the media was reinforcing constantly, talking about all scary stuff, showing the death tolls, like all these people dying, and everybody was paranoid and afraid. And so now, if you come down with it, imagine the fear, like I could die, I'm gonna die. And there was actually like polls taken where like half of the people thought that if you got COVID, you were just dead. That people
Mm,
actually believed, like half of the population thought that. And it's like,
mm,
where did that come from? Because that obviously wasn't the case, but people really thought that and they were terrified. So I could imagine, depending on a person's psychology, like how
uh,
their particular mental state and their susceptibility to things, it that one event could initiate something. Like you could almost consider it like PTSD. You have this one very powerful emotional moment that kind
right.
of sticks with you for a while. Um, and even
Yeah,
if it's
it is.
turns out to
Yeah.
be nothing, the effect in the beginning might stay around. and
Hmm.
and then couple that with being isolated, right? You got to be isolated, and like you're always tired and laying and feeling like shit, um for a duration. Yeah,
Hmm.
that could leave an impact on people that would last a long time. And I don't know, part
I
of me is starting to feel like it might be entirely started by a psychological effect of some sort.
I I don't know if I agree with that. I definitely think it can be exacerbated by
Hmm.
that, and that's probably how we came to notice it and give it a name.
Yeah.
Because you're exactly right. Like there was a lot of hype
Hmm.
behind it. It was absolutely like something serious, but like, of course, the media makes it a little more to be, you know, sell a little more commercials, right?
Yeah.
But I mean, this is a thing that is now actually been studied a little bit. I've looked into some of the uh, scientific journals because I started having thoughts of my own on it. I was like, I wonder if anyone's looking at mitochondria,
Hmm.
because that's like the powerhouse of the cell. And I thought, like, is this something that's like really affected on the cellular level, because it affects so much in the body, uh, everyday functions, things like that. Like, and it's different for everybody. And like what common denominator could there be but the cells, right?
Could
And
be.
sure enough, there are some studies going on and some promising results that it may in fact be affected mitochondria. And if my hypothesis is correct, and this is actually something that come from other viruses, from stress alone, even like psychological trauma, all of that. Like we could be on to something, like why people feel lousy in general. Like
Yeah.
maybe it comes down to the cells in our body, like the mitochondria. And if there's a way to fix that, why not?
Yeah.
Like, why aren't we finding that?
Well,
Like,
that could be a game changer for, because I mean, there may be people who perhaps have this particular condition, I guess we could say,
mhm,
in just in a very mild form, and perhaps it just causes them to really just be lazy, essentially. Like, oh, I just don't feel like it, like
mhm.
demotivates them a little bit, and that could be part of it too, I guess. I mean, yeah, it would absolutely change things in a major way for the whole world if that turns out to be the case, and
Yeah.
there can be a solution created.
I wonder how much of it could be psychological. Like, even being told our whole lives that we will probably die somewhere between 70 and 90 years old kind of makes us die between 70 and 90. Not
That's
saying that
yeah.
we might
So,
live forever or not, but like, like the older you get, the more you're like, oh, wow, my back is starting to hurt as I'm getting older, blah, blah, blah. Like, are you really
it,
hurting more than before, or is it just noticing it more?
it could be like a self-fulfilling prophecy, essentially. And like, maybe you saw your grandparents or parents go through that and they died at a certain age, and
Mhm.
you believe that, oh well, if I start feeling similar symptoms, I'm probably that's it for me. And you maybe just kind of give up. Like, well, this has happened many times where like a husband and wife, right, they're getting older, and one of them dies, and the other one, who was otherwise completely, more or less healthy, suddenly deteriorates and dies too within a short
Oh
span
yeah,
of time.
I I fully expect that to happen with my parents. Um, the broken heart syndrome or whatever.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, like, I mean, for sure, cells decay over time. Entropy is a thing.
Yep.
You can't really get around that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's not like I'm, trying to think of ways to live forever. But
But maybe just improving our life while we're alive to as much of an extent that we can is worth the effort.
mhm,
Yeah, I don't believe we're going to be living to 1,000 years old or something like that, but just simply living longer and being healthier while you're living would would be a big deal, I think. And
yeah,
you can see it. Like, I do believe, very strongly, that there's like a brain body connection, um and your mental state and your perception of things absolutely affects your body
yeah.
in many ways. And I mean, you can just even say it from like, well, if your mind motivates you to exercise and to be active, and then you're obviously going to be better off than if you don't feel that way. But I think there's deeper things that go
Oh
a
yeah,
lot deeper than that. um yeah.
yeah. Get like how some people get over a cold a couple days, sometimes even a day,
Yeah.
and others like me, it might be 2 weeks or whatever. I mean, of course, some of that is, individual differences physiologically, but some of it also could be psychological, because I start to think about how it tends to be like the less I think about some kind of malaise going on in my body, the quicker it kind of disappears for real. Like one
Hmm.
day I'm just like, oh, I remember I was in pain and now I'm not. And I don't really remember the moment where it just kind of vanished. Um,
Hmm. Well,
save for a few times here and there, but
here's a good example. My own personal experience. Just one thing that just popped into my head. Um, a long time ago, I was working for this company and I was out of town, and we had to move a whole bunch of stuff, a bunch of heavy things from one side to another in this room. And so I was moving all this stuff, and then all of a sudden I had this like sharp twinge in my back, and it
Huh.
just, my back just suddenly started hurting, and I collapsed, like fell down to my knees, and it was just like so much pain, and just like, just twitching and throbbing and stuff, and I was trying to fight it and trying to get up and everything, and just focusing on like, oh my god, this hurts so bad, and it just was getting worse and worse and worse. And of course my coworkers were like, oh my god, what's going on? And I'm like, it's my back. I just give me a minute. um and so then I thought, oh, okay, wait, I can't keep focusing on this. So I just like kind of sat there and cleared my head and kind of meditated for a while, and it started subsiding. I mean, it was still, the pain was still
Mhm.
present, like, and I could feel spasming happening, but I was able to then stand up by relaxing, like completely relaxing and not worrying. Like I just kind of thought about other things and just went, just was able to get up. I ended up going back, heading back to town because there was no working through that. I definitely needed to relax, like rest, but that was like instantaneous. That it was
Huh.
the thought, like me focusing on the pain and tensing up and stuff, made the pain get much worse. And as soon as I just kind of zeroed that out, it pretty much went away. Like the pain and there was still dull discomfort there, but it,
Yeah.
like, yeah.
Yeah. I I've done the same with back pain specifically, and there was actually a doctor, Dr. John Sarna, if I remember correctly, wrote a book, or maybe a couple books even, about this mind over back pain. I think was actually even the title, probably.
Hmm.
Um, and he was laughed off as a quack, and eventually I came to kind of the same conclusion, even though, like, after reading the book and trying to practice some of the mindfulness, he was kind of onto something. Like, his idea was all back pain comes from the mind, which I still think is a little bullshit, right?
Yeah, I think that's
Um,
stretching it.
yeah, but what he was touching on could actually be this condition that we call long COVID. It's a tightrope walk between like being a hypochondriac and being actually like very careful about a very real threat. I I came to the conclusion after a lot of these tests said everything was fine, that everything was indeed fine, and my my brain was kind of filling in some of these symptoms. But I did end up finding precancerous polyps in my colon, got those removed, and I had skin cancer, got that removed. So there was stuff wrong, but it couldn't have explained all the other symptoms. So it it shows you, yeah, it can be physical. You're not crazy, but your brain is making it worse.